Good evening, and welcome to Lighting the Way, sharing our energy journeys. I'm Eric Gopplerud, Interim Project Director of Power of Faith. That's the new name of our work that we've been doing together to improve the energy efficiency of our faith buildings, to install renewable energy, and to green our sacred spaces. At our last webinar, we polled participants about what they'd like us to do. Sharing experience, asking questions, learning from one another was the top priority. Second ranking was finance. Our purpose tonight is to begin building a learning community where we can all learn and share, helping us all to lift our congregations. Next month, we'll have a webinar entitled Money Talks. It'll be a discussion with 5 or 6 companies that work specifically with faith communities to finance building energy upgrades and solar. That'll be on March 26th. Tonight, we have 5 green leaders who will briefly describe the energy journeys of their congregations, and then we'll go into breakout groups so that we can talk with one another. FACTS staff will be taking notes. After about a half hour, we'll get back together for a general discussion. We aim to end before 8:30 this evening. The session is being recorded. The breakouts, however, will not be recorded. We will edit and send out a link to the video. So I'd like to introduce the 5 facilitators that we have, our green leaders. Jerry Hartz is founder and co-chair of the Green Accelerator Project at Rock Springs United Church of Christ, which coordinates the environmental work of the congregation, including international support for the Solar Village Project, local environmental action like stream cleanups, helping members make energy improvements in their own homes, and legislative advocacy efforts. He was a key architect of the Net Zero project that made Rock Springs United Church of Christ one of the first congregations in the nation to set a net zero as its goal. His daytime job is as a Chief Government Relations and Communications Officer at the National Democratic Institute. Peter Geiger has been on the property board at Rock Springs Church since 2013 and was the chair for 4 of those years. During his time as chair, he oversaw a $3.2 million renovation of the campus facilities and coordinated the Net Zero project, which resulted in the installation of solar panels on one of their buildings and making all of the buildings more energy efficient. He's a retired project manager with Lockheed Martin. Dale Howell has been on the board of the Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church Buildings and Grounds Committee since 2020 and the chair since last year. After retiring from IBM as a negotiation executive, he's volunteered as a carpenter for the National Park Service and has done several disaster rebuilding efforts, the most recent one in Mayfield, Kentucky, building low-income housing. John Overholt, who was the guiding presence of Rock Springs United Church of Christ Greening, has been working for several years to reduce Rock Springs' environmental impact. Primarily, his emphasis has been in the area of lighting, and hopefully he'll tell you about some of the guerrilla lighting things that he has been doing. Rock Springs replaced all of the fluorescent tubes with LEDs or LED panels. Many of the energy-saving solutions are low-tech and can be executed simply. John has been recording data in Energy Star Portfolio Manager for a number of years, so it can be tracked and improvements documented. John Crandall is leading solar and resiliency hub work at First Presbyterian Church in Winchester. He's a retired psychologist and leader of the resiliency work and has been leading this work for a year. I'd like to perhaps call on folks, each of them, to give a sort of a brief description of what they've done, perhaps starting with Jerry.
Well, I would just bring a message of hope. When we read all the terrible things that are happening with our climate, it can be absolutely overwhelming. But I think we've proven at Rock Spring that you can really have your cake and eat it too. You can help save the planet. You can put a lot of money in your pocket. You're going to spend some money up front, no question, but the end result will be much, much better for the long run. And so that is also true in all of our own homes. So I'm super excited to be here tonight and to share our story.
Thank you, Jerry. Peter?
Well, like as you said in our introduction, Eric, I've been on the Rock Spring Church's property board since 2013, but primarily been very much involved in two projects. One was the renovation of the facilities, and then most recently was the net zero project that we initiated back in August of 2018. As part of that project, we first started looking at what we all used to refer to as the low-hanging fruit that was available to us to make real efficient and cheap changes to enhance the environment around the church. And later on, I'll go into more details, as I'm sure John will as well, on what kinds of things we initiated in that effort. We also got very much involved in having insulation installed in all the roofs of the 5 buildings that are on our campus. We put in solar panels, as you can see just behind John there in his picture. It's 119 panels that we had installed on Carpenter Hall roof. We also looked at we had to install a new roof on that building as well. We also looked into the possibility of getting new windows and also doing building automation around the facility, all of which I'll go into some more detail when we go into the breakout groups.
Terrific. Thanks a lot, Peter. Dale.
Yes, thank you, Eric. My presentation is really what I would call, if it was a college course, EE 101. You have to start with the basics and get the basics down, make sure you have a strong foundation, build on that. Now, our place of worship, a UU church, is 7,500 square feet. So I started looking at the list of the 22 partners within Facts today, and I never did complete it, but a number of the churches are larger, and some of the things scale, some might not. I'm looking mostly when I'm doing something, what scales from what you would do in an average size home to a 7,500 square foot church. But I very much, as Peter said, you have to start out getting the low-hanging fruit, and there can be a lot of benefits that result from that. But we have accomplished a lot. We're 80% done on Energy Star doors, 90% done on Energy Star windows, all appliances except the range, which you can't buy an Energy Star range, are Energy Star compliant, including the hot water heater. We're looking at other things that we can do. A lot of the focus over the last 3-4 months, as we've been in the colder weather, is to weather strip. But the doors that haven't been changed, make sure that we're weather stripping those because the seals are poor in them. But even where we have Energy Star doors, a lot of they're 6 years old, and a lot of the weather stripping on those is bad, or was bad, has all been changed. Costs $30 to change for 3 primary entrance doors. We've also replaced a number of doors, but I'll get into a lot more of that detail, and we can talk about how we financed it and what our plan forward is. So I'll turn it back to you, Eric.
Okay, thank you, Dale. And actually, I wanted to also mention something that I know that you're doing, and also that Rock Springs has been doing, which is tracking energy use.
Mm-hmm.
that you can't, as a former research psychologist, I firmly believe that if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And you certainly can't take credit for the impact of anything you've done unless you've got some data for it.
That's right. Yep.
John Overholt.
Well, I think Peter and has covered most of the things that I had to say. I've been on property board forever at Rock Spring, and not quite, but I'm basically corporate memory, I guess, is on that. But I've been looking at what we can do on the small end, like Dale was talking about, and we went through and replaced. One of the big jobs was replacing all of the fluorescent lights with LEDs tubes, which was a low cost effort to reduce the energy. I set up before I started, I set up a light lab comparing the various LED tubes, because at that point LED tubes were $30 a piece, and they're now down to about $5. So it's much more energy, much more, yet much better payback now with the tubes. In addition to getting the lights all the same color. If you don't want to replace the fixtures, we've replaced the heating system with several years ago. We replaced the heating system. I'm not sure it's still gas powered, but more central than it was.
Well, I hope when we go into the breakout, John, you'll share some of the guerrilla lighting techniques that you use to get folks to adopt LEDs as alternatives. I think it's a wonderful story. John Crandall.
I'm John Crandall. I'm part of the creation care team at First Presbyterian Church in Winchester. A year ago, we had our first meeting. I had told the pastor I felt a new calling and wanted to do some things to help us as a church be better stewards. He said there were a lot of people that were silently saying the same things, and he said, why don't you sit down and invite them into a meeting? And so literally a year ago, we had our first meeting in February of 2023. And it was a brainstorming process over the next couple of weeks, and we involved ultimately about 10% of the congregation in our brainstorming and in this process. And process is going to be a key word in what I share, but into a process of trying to vision what we wanted to do as a church, what would be most useful. And the process led out of the brainstorming for us choosing several important projects, one of which is within the Presbyterian denomination to be recognized as an earth care congregation. And I can't officially announce it because we don't find out officially till 2 days from now, but you know, we've gone through a process of auditing our worship, our education, our management of facilities, our management of mission to see if it's aligned with goals that have been sort of laid out. So instead of inventing everything by ourselves, we looked to what the denomination had offered and found some very useful guidelines. We also, as we brainstormed, decided we really wanted to go for a big project. And the big project for us was to put a solar roof on a church that spends about $30,000 a year on electricity. It's a big campus, a lot of space, a lot of it's old. There are probably all kinds of energy efficiency things that we could do and will do. And in fact, we're building on 10 years of monitoring our electric use, our gas use, and making changes incrementally to make it better, including LEDs, including insulation. But we decided that we want to take a step of going towards solar. And so part of our journey has been the process of trying to research how we could go about doing that, who would support us, how we could best accomplish it, and how we can work within the church at a time when there's not a lot of money available to make it affordable and effective, and then convince people that this is the time. So I want to talk about that process, because there's a process of getting educated, a process of finding the resources that are out there. And I want to say up front, FACTS was at the very beginning of our finding the resources that were out front, available to us. And it has been immeasurably helpful to us as we've begun this journey. So we're in that journey right now. I will tell you in more detail, and if we go in the breakout perhaps, but it's been suggested that before you can sell solar to your church governance, you need to have 10 to 15 interviews. And I started out with that dream, and I'm, as of today, at 28 interviews out of 60 that are scheduled within the congregation, as I just talk to different people that are stakeholders. And I will tell you that that's been immeasurably helpful in convincing people this is a good idea, but it also has been in itself a kind of a mission. I've met people I've never really spent a lot of time with. We've done a lot of faith sharing as well as looking at facts and figures. So that process also includes a very enriching process of knowing your congregants in a new way. So I'll close with that for now, but we are early in the journey, but enthusiastic about it.
Thanks a lot, John. Well, we have a few minutes before we go into breakouts, and I wonder if anyone else from other faith communities would like to briefly mention sort of where they are in the energy journey. And I want to really emphasize what John Crandall has just said. You don't have to be at the end. I think, Rock Creek is pretty far along. Many of us, including in my church, are still in the, let's say, learning phase. So if anyone would like to share in a couple of minutes sort of where their congregation is in their faith journey. Yeah.
John Wilson, Trinity Presbyterian in Herndon, Virginia. And we've been a Creation Care congregation for about 3 years now. And we are just beginning to enter the realm of doing the energy for the church. And we're doing this through Honeywell and Dominion. So we're kind of waiting and see what the results are of that energy audit to guide us as to what next steps we should take. But I think it's a slow process is what we've learned. And not everybody agrees with everything. So we're working our way, and I think we're gonna slowly, but we're gonna get there.
I noticed when you said slow process, there were about 6 heads that I could see that were all bouncing up and down. Jeff Johnson, would you like to say a couple about Unity?
Yeah. Unity of Fairfax and Oakton has been certified as an Earth Care congregation by the Unity movement. We were actually the 4th church worldwide to be declared a certified Earth Care congregation. And that's due to over 10 years, well, actually over 15 years of work. About 7 or 8 years ago, we converted all of our lighting to LEDs in our 2 buildings and the parking lot. Prior to that, we also created a green roof with sedum plants on one of the tops of our buildings. And we're now in the beginning stages of looking at solar installation on our main church building. And we're just capturing information on costs and vendors who have been putting solar installation on various congregations in predominantly Virginia, because there are incentives that are particular to Virginia versus Maryland, DC. And so we're in the stages of investigating, and it will require, as many of you well know, getting the congregation on board, as well as the board of directors to either make an investment of a sizable investment to convert to solar energy. But we all have the spiritual obligation to protect our earth and affect climate change in the process. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Would anyone else like to speak? I do see Maddie Smith here from IPL. And
Hi.
I wonder what, not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm happy to be put on the spot.
If
Yes.
you could say just a few minutes about what you're seeing, because you have a view across, DC, Maryland, Virginia around the journeys that faith communities are making.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I'm so glad you all are doing this webinar. This is so great to hear about what folks are able to accomplish in their congregations. So I'm Maddie Smith. My pronouns are they, them. I'm with Interfaith Power and Light, DMV. And so we work with congregations in DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. And have worked closely with FACS for quite a long time together. And my role at IPL DMV is Clean Energy Shepherd. So and this is really fun for me to get to dive in on. So my goal really is to learn as much as I can about different incentives that exist. I'm pretty familiar with DC and Maryland and solar in general. Like I've been helping congregations with solar for quite a long time. And I'm really looking to learn from you all about any successes you've had with specific contractors, companies, to try to build up like a knowledge base so that when congregations come to me that I can help them and point them in the right direction. Particularly because I know like there's different CPACE programs in different parts of Virginia. And so just anything you all have utilized, it would be super great to learn from you all.
Well, great.
Work together.
Thanks a lot for joining us. And what I hope we're going to do is to be at the beginning of creating a learning community where we learn from one another. I saw David Kepley, your hand was raised.
Sure, happy to share, Eric, and thank you. And thank you for organizing this meeting tonight and the series of meetings that are to come. I'm very eager to hear what the folks that have already spoken, who are going to be our panelists or our leaders in the different discussions. Where we are at my church, I'm at Providence Presbyterian Church in Fairfax, Virginia. We had a solar initiative going on strong, and then our head pastor retired. We have a new head pastor, and so that put everything on hold. And our best advice was, you got an old roof. You really shouldn't put solar panels on an old roof. So we're kind of waiting for, the mother of all hailstorms to destroy our roof so that we can get a new roof and then and then put solar panels on it. And the pastor said, I'll pray for you on that one, okay? I said, okay. I'll leave you in charge of the weather, partner, okay? Then we also got had an energy audit, but I must say I'm not pleased with the level of detail that we got. It checks off the box that I have an energy audit, and they've identified several areas that we kind of already knew about anyway. We've made progress in one of those areas, which was the HVAC system just needed to be tuned. We needed an upgrade in the software. That was accomplished about 1.5 years ago, and then they did some additional tuning. So I'm expecting good things from that. And it was relatively inexpensive. I think the initial cost for the software upgrade was around $13,000, but then this most recent tuning was about $2,700. So that's a good box to check off. The other two things that we're going to work on are lighting, and so I'm very eager to hear from John about, okay, you replace fluorescent with LED bulbs. That's excellent. I want to hear who you used as a contractor. I put our inventory of lights out to one of the contractors, and I haven't heard back from them yet. And this defies logic to me. I always thought when you wave money in front of contractors, they jump like seals going after fish. I don't get it. So I haven't heard from them yet, but maybe if I get some more contractors, maybe they'll be more eager to get money. I don't know. I don't get it, And then the third one that we're working on would be weatherization. And that's why I heard the weather stripping that the one gentleman talked about, Dale. He talked about, sealing up the doors. I've literally laid on my stomach and on beneath, in front of each of the doors inside and looked out, and I could see daylight through every last one of them. So, if you can see daylight, two things can happen. The air goes out, or the air that you don't want comes in, and the bugs and the mice can have a great time getting through without any trouble at all. So I'm looking forward to try to solve those problems, but haven't yet. So thanks, Eric.
Thanks a lot, David. I was wondering, Debbie Sweetlick, if you'd like to say a little bit about where your congregation has been going. You're on mute though, Debbie.
There we go. Sorry, I've had a bad cold, so I was kind of refraining from speaking. I'm representing St. Peter's in the Woods Episcopal Church in Fairfax Station, near the intersection of Route 123 and Burke Center Parkway. About 5 years ago, we implemented a self-energy audit, and we did all the things that you've been talking about. We changed all of our light bulbs. We changed our old appliances that were 20 years old. And we fixed our weather stripping, and we replaced a lot of our light bulbs, and all of that was part of the Northern Virginia Soil Water Conservation Grant. So we were given up to 50% of the cost of all those items, and we used our own members to change the light bulbs and do all the work that needed to be done. We had already put in a new HVAC system in 2018, and so that's a done deal. We are trying to get an energy audit from Dominion now that we have just 2 weeks ago finished a renovation project. So I need to sign up for the energy audit. I'm interested to see what they're going to tell us, but I think I already know the answers. So it's sort of a formality. We cannot afford to change the windows and the window casings that are uninsulated in our building. And so that's our biggest problem, I think, at this point. And we just don't have the financial resources to do that. So, but it's been a journey, and it's been great fun.
Good to hear it. Well, thanks a lot, Debbie, and thanks for everybody jumping in here. At this point, we're going to go into breakout groups. I see Jerry's hand up, but in just a moment, we're going to go into breakout groups. These are going to be mixed groups, so it's not like, all of the people who are interested in solar are going to get into one group, or everybody who's interested in HVAC, and we know everybody's interested in money, so we didn't create that one as a separate group. Each one of the facilitators is going to say a little bit more about what their congregation has done, any surprises, challenges, how they overcame challenges, and that'll be open for discussion. We're going to have a fax person in each of the breakout groups to take notes on questions and answers, because when we go into breakout groups, we can't record anything. So you can say anything outrageous that you want to, and the fax staff people will edit that. We'll have basically a half hour or so for discussions, and then we'll get back together roughly around 8 o'clock. Or if we kind of run out of questions or discussion, we'll get back together sooner than that. Christine Meniz is going to be kind of our project manager. So if you have any questions, problems, put them in the chat and she'll be checking. So Christine, if you could put us into breakout groups. I'd like to sort of, for the facts folks who were taking notes, if perhaps Kathleen, Chris, you could kind of just mention some of the high points of what you heard, and then we'll go into sort of a general discussion.
Sure, I can go first, and then pitch it over to Kathleen. So the 99% of what we talked about was solar, and our folks were one of the participants was at the kind of the beginning of this discussion, trying to figure out in the process. I know one of our facilitators had is further along, is in the past post research, now working with the congregation, and then we had Jerry, who they've done it. So I think that the themes that we came out with this was planning, very key in this whole thing. The energy audit can be one of the biggest kind of selling points to show here's what we're spending, here's what they're estimating we'll save, and then looking at kind of the options, for example, doing research and looking at the financing options that you have, whether it's through kind of a traditional, conventional kind of loan to do this, commercial loan, whether you have a unique circumstance within your congregation where you can borrow against an endowment or something to that effect. Given the kind of the current landscape in terms of interest rates, it's not like it was a few years ago. That being said, there's a lot more discounts and incentives under current law to be able to offset some of the costs, and then choosing the type of funding. In some cases, like a power purchasing agreement, the holder of that may want to take all of the discounts for themselves. So, what may look good may not be a better deal in the end. And just, being able to kind of make the point and kind of sell this. There's a lot of relationship building within the congregation, more than just kind of the key decision makers. And then one of the things that really stood out, and something that we love to hear in facts, is that, it's not just happening at the congregation, that the congregants are taking it back to their houses, taking it back to their communities, and that there is kind of a little bit of peer pressure. So another sanctuary nearby, another congregation may see the panels, may see the sign says "Run on the sun," as Jerry, running on the sun, and they want to take that in, or they see the EV charging. These visible things can start the ball rolling. And I've seen that in residential here where I live. One person put it up. Now we have like 5 others with solar, because it's that, oh, somebody's kind of done it. But then there's that learning from each other, and some things work and some things don't. And so that's it is just that kind of the other piece that was important was given the current political state and that we're in an election year, we may not see all of the advantages of like the Inflation Reduction Act go through the next, if an administration changes. Just because it's in law doesn't necessarily mean it will be kind of continue on and funded, whether it's repealed by Congress or not. There's a lot of power in the Oval Office to fund or not fund, and another administration may not be as committed to the energy efficiency agenda as of the Biden administration. So, gentlemen, if I missed anything, please let me know. But okay, sounds good. So I'm going to pitch it over to Kathleen now to talk about her group.
Yeah, so in my group, we had John Overholt and Peter from Rock Spring, who were our facilitators, and they did a very comprehensive and in-depth overview of what exactly Rock Spring has done, and sort of walked us through what that journey has been like. And I think one of the things that they really emphasized that we spent a lot of time discussing is some of the low-hanging fruit and some of those initial steps that a congregation can take that may require less of a financial commitment than going straight for solar or something like that. But so we spent a good amount of time discussing lighting changes and how exactly that works. That I know I got a little bit lost in some of the conversation about ballast and rewiring to put in LED lights. But we spent a good amount of time talking about that. And I know John mentioned about how much the price of LED lights have gone down, and that now they're about $5 per bulb when originally they used to be 30. So that investment has become much more feasible, and something that is much easier for congregations to maybe take on. I know Peter also talked about some of the different funding sources that the congregation considered when pursuing some of the bigger commitments, like before looking at roofing replacement and installation and solar installation. He also talked about the energy audit that they had done. They had an ASHRAE level 2 energy audit by Energy House, I believe was the contractor that he had mentioned, that provided them with a lot of guidance about what they could, further steps that they could take to reduce their energy consumption and their energy usage. That has been a very valuable resource for them, and that their work as a congregation has gone through, or is in 2 phases. That first phase was the solar installation, replacing their roof so that they could install the solar panels and doing some electrical work. And then they're going into that phase 2 with more building automation and doing some work with their windows. So we also discussed about programmable thermostats that they've had installed in their congregation that will be useful for helping to reduce that energy usage as well. But that was just a brief summary of our conversation. I know we talked about financing, and that they considered some options such as CPACE funding, but were able to, with their congregation, get a loan from their endowment that worked well for them and their situation. But that obviously different congregations are in different situations, so different funding sources may work better depending on their situation. But if there's anything else that you wanted to note, please add that.
Well, let me just summarize a little bit of the third group, which was we talked an awful lot about the value of tracking data, and particularly the value of portfolio manager. Even though there is the period of COVID, which really wrecks comparability, because most of our faith communities closed down or went into some kind of a mode. But going back, say, pre-COVID to 2019, 2018, for comparables is really valuable. And it's also valuable going forward, so that, this sort of the discipline of, even though things may not be even right now back to normal, or last year they weren't normal, in some ways the discipline of putting in that information into something that normalizes the data, makes it comparable to others, also can allow you to kind of benchmark against other faith communities is really important. We talked about checking. You think you're doing a great job of putting in LEDs everywhere, and then if you go back and actually check, you're going to find that there are incandescents all over the place, and that with the prices coming down, it's worth doing the checks. David Kepley talked about looking underneath doors to look for cold spots. Dale at Akatink has used that county, what do they call it? The conservation energy fund. Some of the funds from the county, the matching funds, in order to be able to put in door sweeps and to replace doors that were metal and to do some of the low-hanging fruit. But it's one of these things where you go around either with one of the thermal imaging cameras or one of those little thermal guns that they've been checking your forehead for the last 3 years. They're really good for finding spots that are cold or in the summer hot. One of the real challenges that folks are experiencing. We did have a discussion about solar, and that Akatink is, I think, just about to do a contract with Revolve, which is a power purchase agreement. And the cost to the church is going to be less than what they're currently paying because of RECs and the 30% direct pay from the feds, and the reduction in energy utilization. So Akatink strongly recommends looking at that. And then there's sort of a frustration which was useful to share because it was shared widely, which is not everybody is an energy hawk like we are, and that it's really difficult to manage energy use in a multi-use facility. There are very different understandings of energy efficiency and responsibility for being stewards of creation. And it can be frustrating. It can make you feel really isolated. And at least one of my summaries was what we're doing tonight is part of helping us deal with not getting burnt out, so that we realize that some of the frustrations we're experiencing are shared. And you can call up somebody else and complain about your church, and they'll know exactly where you are. And also they can come up with some ideas of what they've done, or maybe you could do together. So good discussion. I do want to say, I got a note in here. Would we please send participants the information that is the chat? Yes, we will do that. We'll also, we're recording this and we will edit it so that you don't have the big blank spot when we all went off into breakout groups. But it'll make it available. We'll send out that link. Now, I want to just in closing again, just remind you that next month we're going to have a webinar on talking to the money. We're going to have 5 or 6 companies that do lending, particularly to faith communities for energy efficiency upgrades and for solar, so that you can talk to them about what do they do and listen to some alternatives. The aim is a little bit of their pitching and a lot of interaction. So that'll be March 26th. So as we're moving towards a close, any last thoughts, gifts, surprises? Then I really want to thank John Crandall, John Oberhold, Peter, Jerry, and Dale. I'm sorry, for being stepping up and being facilitators, and to all the rest of you for sharing a really nice evening together. So thank you very much. See you, and let's keep working.